I'm here with Dr. Jeffrey Sachs of Columbia University. He's the director of the Earth Institute and a professor of sustainable development. We're here to discuss his book, The Price of Civilization. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks a lot.
So you've written a book about what I would call a social context and a social problem in which the economy plays a part. But you're very, very critical about how this social system, particularly in the United States, is operating in the present.
America is in a crisis, and it's a crisis that I would say I never expected to see 30 years ago, growing up in a middle-class society and a very successful economy. But the middle class is in deep crisis right now, shrinking remarkably, and the most recent data show that nearly 1 in 2 Americans is now in a low-income household. Absolutely remarkable. How is it that America came to such massive inequality, such lawlessness and recklessness on Wall Street, such a deep crisis, such a division of society? That's what I'm trying to understand in this book.
In the book, you place a lot of what you might call weight on the malfunction of the political system that's really based on the role of money in politics.
My basic premise is that a healthy economy needs not only a market system, but it needs effective government, and it needs a moral framework. And I think we have a market system in the U.S., but we don't have a decently functioning political structure. We don't have government that works. And I think, unfortunately, the moral fiber has really become terribly lost in many ways, reflected in the spate of corporate scandals and the sense of irresponsibility that one sees among major sectors in the U.S. So it's not a happy book in this sense. My point is that you can't view 2008 as an accident where a business cycle occurred. You can't even view it merely as the buildup of a financial bubble in the past decade that burst. It's something deeper than that, and its roots go back several decades. I start actually in the 1970s, saying that the U.S. faced a crisis, or at least a major change of context with the emergence of the global economy. It wasn't unique to the U.S. That we faced this. Virtually every part of the world faced the emergence of the new globalization. How that was addressed by society affected the pathways that different parts of the world took over the next 30 years. And for me, Ronald Reagan really set the direction of the United States. When he came into office on January 20th, 1981, he made a famous statement. He said that government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem. And that is a remarkable attitude for an incoming president of the United States who's elected to govern. But what President Reagan did was substantially dismantle government and its functionality. There was, of course, the tax cuts, especially for the high-income Americans. There was a substantial amount of deregulation, which culminated in a series of financial crises. There was a lot of outsourcing of functions that I believe should be in government, not in private arms contractors and other private sector entities. There was an abandonment of environmental responsibility. When you add it all up, we faced a massive challenge of globalization that required a big restructuring of the economy and a help for those parts of society that were going to bear a first cost of that, especially lower skilled workers now in competition with low skilled workers halfway around the world. But instead of handling that major transformation responsibly, ethically, legally even, and in an efficient manner to make sure that the human capital, the skills, the competitiveness of the U.S. economy could be maintained, we instead had a bad diagnosis that government was the problem rather than the challenge of globalization. And we had an irresponsibility in government withdrawing in crucial ways from what it needed to do, or turning over the levers of power to powerful corporate lobbies. We're now 30 years later, and while we may be seeing a glimmer of recovery from the sharp business cycle downturn after 2008, I don't think that we're seeing a healing of society right now. The underlying social divisions are still widening. The crisis of massive expansion of the low-income share of the population is still underway. The failures of education and lack of and loss of social mobility in the U.S. are preeminent features of our social landscape right now.